Good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 a.m. on this first day of November. Welcome to the City Council meeting. We, as usual, will start with our chaplain prayer and pledges. And today we have Lorenzo Hatch from our police department chaplain. Thank you for being here today.
Please bow your heads with me. During this month of November, we take the opportunity to reflect on gratitude. Oh God, we come before you with gratitude. We thank you for being a God of love who is with us now in this very room. You never leave us or forsake us. We thank you for making each of us, every person we meet, every citizen of the city in your own image, with dignity and infinite worth. We thank you for the calling you have given each one of us to be good stewards of your creation, to love our neighbors as ourselves. I thank you, God, for these your servants, our mayor, our city manager, our city staff, and our city council members. I give thanks for the way of service they have chosen to take up on behalf of all of us here. We all come to this room as complex human beings, carrying burdens, carrying joy and hope, trusting that you alone can hold us together, O God, in your love and peace. Help us, Lord, to trust you more than our fears and our wounds and even our accomplishments. May we lean on your everlasting arms. Finally, Lord, we ask you to bless and protect our faithful servants of the police and fire departments. Keep them and their families in the safety of your hands. We ask this in all things through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge
Allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We have three proclamations this morning, and the first one we are going to do is Texas Arbor Day. Are there individuals in the audience today to receive this proclamation? All across Texas, from towering pines to majestic oaks to scrubby mesquites, the many trees of Texas are beautiful and prominent features of our unique and breathtaking landscape. As Texans, we value our trees and the benefits they provide each of us every day. Benefits like clean air, clear water, improving our health, and even saving us money on energy bills. We encourage people in our community to plant trees and celebrate them on the first Friday in November on Texas Arbor Day. Texas first observed Arbor Day in 1889 under the leadership of the Texas Forestry Association. This holiday for trees is an opportunity to teach fundamental lessons about the stewardship of our natural resources and caring for our environment. It is an opportunity to learn what each of us can do to keep our community trees healthy and vibrant. And it is a time we can pause to appreciate trees in our lives. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, on behalf of the City Council of San Angelo, proclaim November 4th, 2022 as Texas Arbor Day. In our community, together we can create a brighter and more beautiful future for the next generation. They, in turn, can affirm the duty of protecting our natural resources by being responsible stewards of this great land. Charlotte, I'm going to give you this.
So I'm excited to be with you guys. Thank you, Mayor Gunter and City Council, for the proclamation. Today, we will be receiving 200 trees that were granted to us from the Apache Corporation. They are coming to us from Houston, from Tree Life Farms, and we have a variety of red oaks, live oaks, and cedar elms. This will be our 450th tree that we've received from this grant over the past 3 years. The Apache Corporation is giving away their 5 millionth tree this year. This is their 18th year, and they also send trees to 17 states all over the United States. So we're very, very proud to be a recipient of these trees. They will be going to all of our school campuses. So we give trees to Howard College, to Angelo State University, to every campus for SAISD. We also include some of our private schools, so Trinity Lutheran, Angelo Catholic, Ambleside has received trees, Cornerstone, San Angelo Christian Academy. We provide trees to the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Clubs. So again, we're very proud of this award. It means a lot to us to enhance and beautify our community. Our students will be the recipients of cleaner and fresher air, like Mayor Gunter said. They'll also have shade, beautiful 35-foot canopies, and new habitats to explore with our trees and our wildlife. So thank you again. We're really grateful for this honor.
Thank you, Very well done. Our next proclamation is National Adoption Month. I'm sure I have folks in the audience for this. Come forward, please. All children deserve a safe place to live and grow, and each year many Texas children find a forever home thanks to adoptive families. In Tom Green County, there are many children currently in foster care awaiting a forever family to bring them home. During the month of November, communities across the country come together to observe National Adoption Month to encourage and complete the adoptions of children in foster care and to celebrate the families who choose to adopt. The City of San Angelo recognizes National Adoption Month in support of the adoptive families here in our own community and encourages others to open their hearts to children in need of loving and permanent homes. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as National Adoption Month and call on all citizens to remember the children and families who have joined their lives to the miracle of adoption, open their hearts and minds to the idea of opening their own homes to children in need, and congratulate the new families to be formed during National Adoption Month. Please.
So thank you to the City Council and for everyone for
Talking to the microphone.
Thank you to the City Council and for everyone for supporting DFPS, CPS. Our job is really difficult, and we count on everybody else to help us get through that every day. We do have 20 kids, I believe 20 kids getting adopted in Tom Green County. So that's 14 families, 20 kids, and that'll be on November 18th. So those kids will be adopted, and they're going to their loving homes. And gratefully, a lot of those homes that are going to adopt them are with family, so they are staying with family. And we're just really happy and excited for that. So.
Our next proclamation is Family Court Awareness Month. And anyone in the audience here to receive and to speak? Come on. The mission of the Family Court Awareness Month Committee is to increase awareness on the importance of a family court system that prioritizes child safety and acts in the best interest of children. The mission at the FCAMC is fueled by the desire to create awareness and change in the family court system for the conservatively estimated 58,000 children a year ordered into unsupervised contact with abusive parents, while also honoring the hundreds of children who have been reported as murdered during visitation with a dangerous parent. The mission of the FCAMC is to increase awareness on the importance of empirically based education and training on domestic violence and child abuse, including emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as childhood trauma, coercive control, and post-separation abuse for judges and all family court professionals working on cases within the family court system. The education of court professionals uses evidence-based, peer-reviewed research. Such research is a critical component to making decisions that are truly in the best interest of children. This research includes the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, child custody evaluators' beliefs about domestic abuse allegations, and child custody outcomes in cases involving parental alienation and abuse allegations. The mission of the FCAMC is to increase awareness on the importance of using scientifically valid, evidence-based treatment programs and services that are proven in terms of safety, effectiveness, and therapeutic value. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of San Angelo, Texas, on the behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as Family Court Awareness Month and encourage all residents to support our community's efforts in preventing the harm of children in the hands of family members and to honor and value the lives of children.
Hi guys, so I am not much of a speaker, kind of crazy the things that you will do for your children. To you guys, I'm just Destiny Carr. To Clayton and Grayson Polk, my children that were taken from me from their abusive father, I'm their world. I'm their mommy. I've been consistent. I've been the one in their life. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'll spare you guys that. But throughout this process, I believe that God put me here for a reason, to stand for the voices that are unheard. And I pray that we can go beyond the recognition of this and actually see a change within our judicial system, from preventing our children from being in the hands of abusive parents, unsafe parents. But I want to say that I'm super grateful to be here today, from the mayor to the city council. And I hope that you guys do a little research on this, look into it, and support me in this. Thank you so much.
We will now move into the public comment section of the agenda. Issues or concerns not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating their name and address or single-member district number, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. May I ask anyone to come forward if they have public comment?
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Charlotte Anderson, Executive Director for Keep San Angelo Beautiful. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about our last fall sweep event and give you a few details. So we had 35 teams, over 393 participants. We generated 1,200 hours at a value of $27.20 per volunteer hour. That is a donation to the city of $32,640 in labor. We had 28 different locations that we cleaned. We provided 242 luncheons. We collected over 280 bags of trash, over a ton of trash, so a little bit over 2,040 pounds. Our most interesting item was a Queen CD, "We Are the Champions," and indeed, we are the champions. Our best spirit was from our Girl Scouts. We had about 110 Girl Scouts with us. Our tough team was from Goodfellow Air Force Base, Navy Chiefs under the direction of Mr. Diaz, who brought in the most trash. And our best host was Buffalo Wild Wings. So I just wanted to keep you up to date on our activities. We had a wonderful event. We are still incident-free for all of our years, so we're excited about that as well. I've provided a little flyer on our literature, but just a fantastic event. We're looking forward to another tire event. The tire event will be November the 19th, and again, we expect to collect a little over 2,000, 3,000 tires. We have 4 18-wheelers that'll be coming from Burnett, Texas. The tires that we take away from our community do not go into the landfill, but they go to Reliable Tires where they're chipped into 1-inch squares, and the steel is sent to a foundry which is turned into angle iron and rebar products. So that's my little update. Very excited to be with you this morning. Again, we hope you will join us and pledge to be litter-free. That's our goal for San Angelo. So thank you, and y'all have a great day.
Charlotte.
Any questions?
Good work, Charlotte. We
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Morning, City Council. I am John Barrio, a resident of Single Member District 2, right here in the fine city of San Angelo, Texas. I thank the many citizens in attendance today, and both in person and online, and those who will be watching later. Many from outside San Angelo are observing this meeting. Some are in attendance, while others are watching live or will be viewing the meeting's recordings at a later time. We, the people of San Angelo, extend a welcome to the following officials who have been invited by various citizens other than myself and have taken an acute interest in the performance of this council. The Honorable Texas Governor Greg Abbott, the Office of the Honorable Texas Secretary of State, the Office of the Honorable Texas Attorney General, the Office of the Honorable Texas Comptroller, and the Texas Rangers Corruption and Public Integrity Units. Additionally, we welcome the City Council members, economic developers, chambers of commerce, and others around the state of Texas who have a current interest in this council's meetings. Thank you all for your attendance to this matter at hand.
Any further public comment today?
Good morning, Nelda Martin Allen. I am a constituent of Tommy Hubert's. I come today to thank the mayor, the council, and city manager Daniel Valenzuela for quickly addressing our request on the ADA upgrades that we hope will happen here in San Angelo. I encourage any city council member that thinks that they have the time to attend a national forum. It's in sunny California in January. But thank you very much for your continually addressing this issue. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hello, Brian Groves, Communications Manager, District 6. To piggyback on the ADA, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll have an item at the next council meeting about closed captioning for our TV channel as a way that something in our department can help address the ADA concerns. The other item that I wanted to bring up is that our Charter Review Committee will have another town hall meeting on November 14th at 6 p.m. at City Hall. And we just wanted to invite the public to that meeting to hopefully get some feedback and learn about what the Charter Review Committee is doing. So, thank you.
Further public comment? Come forward. Good morning.
Chad Brown, single member District 1. I'm here to represent Allen's Transport. We're a new company based out of Leduc, Canada. This just came into town recently. Michael Looney and the Chamber has worked very hard with us to get that company over here in San Angelo. So he asked if I can come briefly kind of explain what we got going on. The idea is what our growth plan is here in the near future. Right now, we're close to hiring our first driver. I'm the only individual employee here in the U.S. division. First driver should be coming on here within the next few weeks. Growth plan from there, we've got 10 units on the ground, and we look to expand to 10 to 15 drivers very quickly. Hopefully, Q1 of next year, we'll expand more of an office-type personnel, payroll, different areas of that aspect. The idea is to mirror the company out of Leduc, Canada that has over 100 employees, and that's what our growth plan is here. We've got some special things, interest with some customer base that we have regionally, nationally, and hoping to look to incorporate maybe the new rail port and different aspects of that. So our primary focus right now is transportation of produced chemical, hazmat material, but we're not afraid to haul just about anything that can be pulled by a tractor trailer. So that's hopefully our growth plan. I'm born and raised from here and know the network very well. I'm hoping to make a good impact here for the city of San Angelo. So we just thank y'all. This is from Michael Looney to Tommy and everyone here at Allen's Transport. We got into the bulk transporter, which is a very nice broadcast company.
Good morning, Kim Henry with Service Member District Number 3. And I also wanted to publicly thank the City Council and the Mayor. We have already had one meeting with the City Manager, and so thank you for that. We also have action items that we're going to be following up on, so things like hiring an ADA coordinator, participating in training, doing simulation training, and of course, addressing the transition plan and the self-evaluation. So if you have any questions, I would love to be able to answer any questions, but I also want to let you know that we're working with other individuals and organizations in the town to set up our own committee that we're going to be proposing to City Council. So again, I wanted to let the city know publicly as well that we have made some progress and we're continuing to do that, and we'll make sure we continue with those updates. So thank you again for taking it seriously.
Thank you, Kim. Wait. Go ahead.
One of our 20 under 40 award recipients.
Thank you.
Further public comment?
Zane White, District 6. For 17 years now, the gigantic Hotel Cactus sign atop Lee Pfluger's 14-story Cactus Hotel has been a disgusting, high-profile embarrassment in the downtown San Angelo skyline ever since Lee Pfluger removed the 12 of the 22 sign letters and has arrogantly refused to replace them. Months ago, after I forced several City of San Angelo officials to admit in writing that Lee Pfluger's rooftop sign has been in violation of city sign code violations for many years, those same officials launched an illegal campaign of outrageous lies and intimidation attempts against me in an effort to silence my public exposure of their corruption. City Manager Daniel Valenzuela is ultimately responsible for the last 10 years of related corruption. Since at least January of this year, Daniel Valenzuela, City Attorney Teresa James, and her husband John James, who is director of the city's Planning and Development Services Department, have repeatedly refused to provide a legally legitimate explanation regarding why Lee Pfluger has for many consecutive years gotten a city code enforcement free pass, potentially worth 6 figures, while other less wealthy and influential San Angelo residents and business owners have literally had their personal and professional livelihoods threatened by incredibly strict code enforcement. Additional unethical and/or illegal actions by Daniel Valenzuela appear to have recently led to the sudden resignations of 2 very highly respected local community leaders serving on the City of San Angelo Development Corporation, and today's agenda indicates that another longstanding, highly respected local community leader now faces potential immediate termination by this council for recently daring to publicly expose Daniel Valenzuela's questionable actions related to COSA DC operations. Please correct me if this is inaccurate, but I'm told the State Attorney General and the Texas Rangers have recently initiated an investigation regarding Daniel Valenzuela and the City of San Angelo municipal government for actions related to potential public corruption. If Daniel Valenzuela and/or City Attorney Teresa James continue to refuse to provide a legally legitimate reason for failing to immediately issue sign code violation citations to Lee Pfluger, I'll see to it that the AG investigators and Texas Rangers have that matter to look into as well. This city council is sworn to act in the best interest of justice on behalf of the citizens of San Angelo, not to unethically protect their official friends by pretending that those friends aren't guilty of blatant, sleazy corruption. Not one of you has ever contacted me regarding the details of my corruption allegations, and many West Texans are rightfully wondering why. The sad fact is that thousands of those West Texans are confident they actually do know why, and the reason is complicit corruption.
Thank you, Zane. Further public comment? I'm going to count to 3. You have a chance to still come up and make a comment. 1, 2, 3. Public comment has now stopped, and we will move into our consent agenda. I'm going to ask each council member if there's an item that they would like to pull from the consent agenda, and I will start with Larry.
Item K.
Item K has been pulled. None. Lucy?
None.
Harry?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
Yeah, I actually want to pull F.
F? And Tommy?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F and item K?
So move.
So moved by Harry, seconded by,
I'll second it.
Larry raised his hand, Tommy had a voice, we got a double.
Let Larry have it.
Seconded.
Let Larry
Larry,
have it.
you get it. Any public comment on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor of approving consent agenda with the exception of I and K, please say aye. What did I say?
You said I, but it's F.
I said F. And
Okay.
okay. All right. Let's take a vote. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With none opposed, the consent agenda has been approved with the exception of F and K. We'll start with item F. Consider approving the purchase of used vehicles from various local vendors in a combined amount not to exceed $80,000. And it's not Ryan Kramer.
It is not. I'm stepping in for Ryan Kramer
Thank
this
you.
morning. I'm Patrick Ferrick, the Director of Operations, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
You know, Patrick, that one's pretty broad. How many cars? What's the process there? Because we'll get phone calls. Well, I did get a chance to bid. I didn't get a chance. Just give me a brief synopsis of the process.
Correct, and it is very broad. These cars are specifically for our detective units and our undercover units of our PD, and so they vary, right? And so usually when we go out for bid, we're bidding a specific make, model, and awarding that. In this realm, they need some variety, and so we bid this. We allocate a portion of our annual equipment replacement money for this. So we're looking for 3 to 4 cars, depending on the market price, for the detective and the undercover departments.
All I need.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to make a motion to approve that or wait? and do
Make a
both?
motion to approve.
Okay, by Tom.
Second.
Second by Karen. Any public comment on that item? Seeing none, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item F, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, item F is approved 7-0. We will now move into item K. Consider a resolution in support of an application by the Trans-Permian H2 Hub LLC in response to Department of Energy funding opportunity, Regional Clean Hydrogen Hubs funding opportunity announcement dated September 22nd, 2022. Michael, you are on.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Michael Dane, Acting Economic Development Director. TransPermian proposes to build a clean hydrogen generation facility in the Fort Stockton area and development of a hub in the region, which would support and be supported by that generation facility. If you have questions, they're applying for federal monies to support in the construction of that facility. This resolution is our statement, our non-binding statement of support for their application for some of that federal money. If you have deeper questions, Roger Horton, who is supporting their grant application, is here and can help us with those deeper or more detailed questions.
Would
Larry,
you like?
This sounds very
Roger,
exciting.
please come forward.
I know it's in its very early stages, but I'd like to know your ideas on potential economic impact and those other areas that you are at this time ready to comment on.
Sure. Just give you a little background. MMEX Corporation has been around for quite a while, and they've been working on the concept of blue and green hydrogen for 2 or 3 years. They have about 1,700 acres of land near Fort Stockton, Texas, that is strategically located next to the Texas Pacific Railroad. There's a natural gas pipeline that flows through the property and a large heavy AEP power line that goes over it, which makes it an ideal location for this kind of facility. Not related to the hydrogen hub application, the MMEX plan is to build a refinery, a modular refinery, to refine diesel fuel and gasoline and blue and green hydrogen all in one facility. So there's a bigger picture there. MMEX is promoting this grant application and with the DOE, and basically they're doing it because of their own interest, of course. I mean, and they're centralized to the location of this hub. So we've reached out to the city of San Antonio, the city of El Paso, Midland, and San Angelo, Texas, and that would create the demographic of the hub. On November, the Inflation Reduction Act created this opportunity. There's $7 billion has been set aside out of the Inflation Reduction Act to create 6 to 10 hydrogen hubs in the U.S. The amount of grant will probably range between $500 million and $1.25 billion, depending on the location and the complexity and whatever develops from the concept papers, which is what we're asking y'all to support, that have to be submitted by November 7th. The return time is amazingly fast on this concept paper. I mean, it was the Inflation Reduction Act, and I don't know the date, probably 6 weeks old, maybe, something like that. But the concept paper to qualify for the grant has to be in by November 7th. So we're not asking for any money. We're not asking for anything but letters of support from each one of the involved communities in the hub as we present it. My client is shouldering all of the costs and all of the application fees or whatever goes along with this. There may be some opportunities down the road that individual industry may come back to you for that spin off of this, but right now we're just looking for a letter of support. To get to your point, I had to background you a little bit, Councilman. The economic opportunity is forward thinking. Right now, under the current operations plan for MMEX, frankly, most of what they want to produce will be export. Europe, and in particular Japan, has a keen interest in the products that would come from this facility.
Roger, could you tell us specifically how the city of San Angelo will benefit from this?
As best I can.
That's what we're interested in.
Yeah. Mr. Looney and I are working on a project right now with a company that would be directly connected, although not part of the MMEX Corporation, but would be listed in the concept paper. And it would employ a significant number of people at good paying jobs. To be blunt, I think we're talking probably somewhere north of 200 jobs. And that would have a direct impact on San Angelo.
Okay. Do we have questions for Roger?
I think you've done an excellent job in giving us the information we need on this.
Trying to be as informative, but
It's hard for you to make it short.
yes, you know me well.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks, Roger. With that, may I have a motion for approval of the resolution? Approved. Karen made a motion, seconded by Lucy. Any public comment concerning this resolution? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, we will move on from consent agenda with item K being approved 7-0. We will now move into the regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempt from the time limit above and instead must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes.
Mayor,
Yes, Tommy.
I have a question for the city attorney.
Sure.
Teresa, may an item be removed from consideration?
Oh, yeah, we do that all the time, frequently. So you can just ask it to be removed from consideration, and if
I
nobody
would
objects, then
ask
it's
that
removed.
item C be removed from consideration unless council objects.
Is there anyone on council today that would not support removing item C for discussion today?
I support that removal.
Okay. Anybody else have concerns about removing it? All right. Then do we need to take a vote on that, or do we just?
No, ma'am, it just becomes a non-item. We never have voted on it before.
Okay.
Just move on.
Then we'll go to item A, consider accepting the proposal from Core and Main for Neptune meter infrastructure upgrades in the amount of $380,908.30 for collector replacement and installation, and authorizing the initial purchase of $1,500,000 for register replacement and $800,000 for meter replacement for a total cost of $2,680,980 for the first fiscal year of the project using $1,930,981 of the water fund balance. Andy, you're on.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, Council. Andy Vaselio, Assistant Director of Water Utilities. And so what we are looking at today is water utility uses an advanced metering infrastructure system to collect our meter readings and transmit it back to our billing department for water billing purposes. This technology is approximately 12 years old, and like any technology, as it gets older, you start having problems with it. It doesn't have the frequent updates. Trying to get support is more and more difficult and more costly. So at this point, we're looking at upgrading from the R450 to the R900 version 5. And if you look at that graphic here, just to give you a little background of how it works, you have your water meter, which is a mechanical meter that the water passes through. On top of it is a little black box, we'll call it. That's the register. So it actually records it and transmits it to electronic signal. It then goes to the antenna. So if you've ever looked at the top of your meter box, you can see that little black disc there. That's the antenna. That then transmits it to what's called a collector. Tom, you with me?
I'm with you.
I wondered what that was.
We wondered what we had to go break to avoid the water billing stop. We're good.
So it goes to the collectors, Right now, we have 9. With this proposal, looking at 13, and then that transmits it back to water billing. So it's a very efficient way compared to the old means of going out there and manually reading meters. So for this project, we're looking at increasing and replacing the collectors. We're looking at a 5-year replacement for registers and a 10-year replacement for the water meters. Here's a picture of one of the new collectors we're looking at. And again, we'd be looking at purchasing 8 new R900 V5 collectors. Core and Main through Neptune, the manufacturer, would be providing 5 collectors to the city at no cost. So we'll be upgrading, if you will, from 9 collectors to 13, which would increase our ability to capture the meter readings through this system. And then also, as part of our proposal, we're looking at having a subcontractor through Core and Main to actually install the 13 collectors. Be very efficient that way, and also provide the ability to test and get it all set up at one time. Here's a picture of the water meter with the register. As I mentioned before, the registers, we're looking at a 5-year replacement program. So in that 5 years, we'd have to be operating both the R450 and the R900s at the same time, but this is a feasible by budget method of replacing it. And then we're looking at 10-year replacement of meters. Having a meter replacement program is something that a lot of water systems do. Water meters get old and they start reading less accurate over time. Right
You're
now,
talking about replacing meters throughout the entire city?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So from a budgetary standpoint, we're looking at from 10 years. Typically, a water meter has a 10 to 20-year lifespan. They also say 1 million gallons. Right now, our method is if we observe a problem from the billing software, then we send people out and go look at it. So this is a proactive means of replacing our meters that are 10 years old, or some even are even older. Some of our larger meters aren't even on our AMI system right now. And so this is to help address that. The benefits of going to the 900 version 5 is, first of all, we're going to increase and improve the accuracy and efficiency of our water metering system. Right now, again, we're starting to see some degradation of the system, so we're proactively trying to approach this as opposed to waiting it to continue getting down the road and getting worse and worse. And then the existing system has just reached the end of its useful life. The graphic you see there in the orange, this is from 2017 through 2022. The orange is the number of manual read meters we've had to do in the month of August over a 6-year span. So you can continue to see that orange is growing and growing, meaning our customer service folks are having to go out there and manually read more and more meters, taking away from their other responsibilities. So the project approach, $380,908.30 was for the new collectors. Again, I mentioned we purchased 8 of them, 5 of them we provided at no cost, and the installation. Then the register replacement for 5 years, starting with the first year at $1.5 million. And then meters the first year at $800,000 for a total first year cost of $2,680,908.30. So with that, I'd like to see if there's any questions.
Do I have questions, Tom?
So do those 13 units cover the entire city?
That is correct, yes. If I remember right, so they've done what they call a prop study, and currently, you saw that one graphic, we're getting about 75% coverage. I believe it was in the 95%, 93%, so it's going to be a significant increase of reading through the AMI system.
Further questions, Tom?
It's going to take, and I'm not complaining, it's just to understand, it's going to take 10 years to do the entire replacement throughout the city. Is that what you indicated?
For the meters, yes. For the registers, right. 5. And part of it is we're going to be doing it with our staff. And so that means we have to balance that with the rest of their responsibilities currently. So again, we feel that budget-wise and personnel-wise, this is a reasonable, feasible approach.
Okay. Karen, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I think we have a question about the lifespan of the units
Of the
initially.
meters, or, Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned, industry standards 10 to 20 years.
It's
but
kind of a bit wide range there.
Yes, ma'am. Well, and like any mechanical part, sometimes the lifespan of one specific item can range over a wide number of years. So 1 million gallons is also kind of the estimate, so.
You also note that the total cost of the project is $2,689.80, and that
Yes.
you're going to use $1,930,981 of an existing water fund balance. Can you account for the remainder of the cost in that first year?
So right now, we have approximately $39.3 million in fund balance. And so we're looking at utilizing some of those funds to kickstart this project.
Further questions or comments? Go ahead, Lucy.
Andy, when was the last time these meters were replaced?
On a wholesale meter change, I can't answer that. I know back in I think it was 2010, when we put this R450 system in, they replaced a lot of them. But I also know we have some old meters from a different manufacturer that predated even our current AMI system. So that's part of the reason that we're looking at wholesale changeouts.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Then may I have a motion for approval of item A? So moved by Harry. May I have a second? Do I have a second? Second by Karen. Any public comment on this item?
Anna Bartosh, single member, District 1. Maybe I'm not understanding, but they last 10 to 20 years, and this is for replacing. So once you get done replacing, this must be gonna be an ongoing project, because when you're finished replacing, 10 years down the road, the beginning ones are already expired again. So is that
Depending
what?
whether it's 10 or 20 or somewhere in between, like 18. I mean, that's the problem when I say
It
it's a
sounds
wide
like it's an
range. Yeah.
ongoing project,
Yeah.
because once you get them in, which will take you 10 years to get them in, now you got to start over again.
Yes, ma'am.
We have the same problem with streets as well. We have to do the kind of the seal code and come right back.
Well,
to it
Andy,
again.
They don't last for forever is the problem. Forever is not in this conversation.
Andy, would it be a fair assumption to say that private residential households would use them less than commercial? Those would probably last closer to 20. The commercial usage would last closer to 10. It's all based upon the usage of the meter.
If you're based on usage, and yes, absolutely. And I believe approximately 80% of our meters are the 5/8, which are the standard residential. So again, these
More than
are
likely,
these are
most of them should
generalizations.
get to the 20.
Some will last less than 10 years. It's just mechanical
Like a car.
parts.
It could last 30,000. I mean, it's all things purchased
We have
new.
some over 20 years in the system right now.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, so I had a motion and a second. I've had public comment, or is there more public comment, I should say, before I move on? Seeing none, then we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item A, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? With none opposed, the motion is approved 7-0. We'll move into item B, discussion and possible action on animal services operations, including spray, neuter enforcement, and compliance, animal capacity, and facility capacity needs. And we have our Family Services Morgan here to speak to us today.
Good morning.
Morning.
What we have before you today is it's a hit on a few items. We've been busy the last 60 days revamping a lot of the things that we do and addressing some needs to bring to the council. And so what we wanted to touch on today is first to talk about spay-neuter enforcement and compliance and what's going on with that, what changes we've recently made. We also wanted to talk about the animal capacity and the recent policy to set a finite amount of cats and dogs on the premises, and we'll close with facility capital needs as we identify those through this recent process.
Morgan, would you start by describing the purpose of the animal shelter? What is the purpose?
Animal Services was created to prevent the spread of disease from animals to humans. So it's essentially a public health and public safety component. As a mature city that values quality of life, we were also charged to pursue life-saving programming. So we also aim to meet families where they are, identify services to help them retain and keep their pets, as well as to adopt out those pets that have no owner.
Okay.
So first update we have for y'all is related to spay-neuter enforcement. So there, of course, is a local ordinance that provides that owners are responsible and must carry the expense to spay-neuter their pets. So this is any cat or dog that is over 4 months of age. There are a few exceptions. For example, if your pet is medically fragile, we just ask for a veterinarian's record stating that. A few other exemptions would be military and law enforcement canines are not required to be spay-neutered. If you are an AKC registered show dog and it's required for your animal to be intact, that's also an exception under the ordinance. There's a number of exceptions, but by and large, most families must comply. We do ask that they make that investment in the health of their pet and also take that action to prevent unwanted litters.
So when we have a pet in the shelter, do we release them without enforcing the spray neuter that's in the ordinance?
We enforce it, so we're legally prohibited from withholding someone's property from them. State law does define cats and dogs as property. And so if someone comes forward and says, hey, that's my dog that you're calling Heidi, then we would be legally required to release that animal to them, and then we notify them of the ordinance. At that time, we can issue citations. Hey, your pet came in and was unaltered, so we're going to go ahead and cite you for failure to spay-neuter. Our preference is, and what we ordinarily do, is we educate families. The vast majority of San Angelo and still today don't know that it is legally required. So we, one, educate you, hey, you are required to spay-neuter this pet. There are some low-cost options that we can refer you to. We're going to give you a deadline to get that item complete. And so our prior practice was we wanted them to avoid those court costs and instead take those funds and invest them in their pet's health, and then follow up by issuing a citation. But we did inform them at the time we give them their pet back that the ordinance requires them to spray and neuter. Spay and neuter their pet.
And there would be a citation if they don't. But how do you follow up on that to make sure that they have sprayed and neutered?
So to confirm the spay-neuter, the owner is required to provide that to us. In the past, we would call, we would go by, we would knock doors. Hey, you haven't provided your proof yet. We're looking for that information. And to the extent that they hadn't provided it or hadn't made progress yet, we would go ahead and cite at that time. But as you can imagine, once someone knows they're in violation and knows that we're trying to get a hold of them, they're non-responsive to those calls and door knockings. And so we did get a change to that process to kind of close the loop, that now we're filing complaints through our municipal prosecutor. It's essentially a citation in the mail. And so we are collecting all that information at the first interaction with the citizen that we need to file on. And in the event that they don't provide that proof of spay-neuter, we would then file a complaint through the municipal court where they have to appear, hey, that you still haven't spay-neutered your pet, or you have, and please bring that proof with you.
So if they go to municipal court and they don't have proof of spray or neuter, what happens next? Spay, I said spray, spay. Can you correct all the times I've just said that word and said it wrong? Could you do that for me? Could you edit it? Because I don't want to be accused of not knowing what I'm talking about. Spay,
There you go.
not spray. Thank you.
So when the citizen appears before the municipal court, the municipal prosecutor is there to present the case, and it's in the court system at that point.
Lucy?
This ultimately lead to a warrant?
Wait a minute, Larry. Lucy raised her hand.
I just need to ask you a question. Can you please walk me through the process of when someone either comes and drops off their dog at the shelter, or y'all pick a dog up? I want to understand what your procedure is.
So an owner bringing in a dog, we do have a process approved by our Animal Shelter Advisory Committee where owned pets to intake at the shelter have to go through a process. So there's a counseling, we try to refer you to services, we try to match you with resources so you can keep your pet, and then you're put on a wait list if you are approved at some point for a shelter intake. So for owned pets, just walking in the front counter with your pet, we do ask you to participate in a process to rehome your pet. The vast majority of our intake are stray animals. 70% of our animals are brought in by citizens across the front counter. They found a dog, they found a cat, they bring it to the shelter. We then, of course, look for identifying tags, scan for microchip, look at local lost and found sites and social media groups to try to identify an owner. When an owner is identified, we call that individual, please come in and get your pet. And at that point, we notify them of the law. There are actually several items required under local ordinance. And so in that first interaction with a citizen, we say, whether it's at the shelter across the front counter or in the field, hey, I caught your dog. He's a block from your home. I'll just meet you there. And so at that point, we notify them that, hey, your pet's got to have a current rabies vaccine. Your pet's got to be microchipped, if not already. And it needs to be spay-neutered. And at that point, the citizen may say, well, yes, here's my rabies certificate. Or, yes, I have this exemption under the spay-neuter ordinance. And so we'll start working through the compliance for that specific family at that time.
So how long do you give them to take care of all this if they have a long list of things to do for this pet?
So if you're redeeming your pet at the shelter, it's leaving microchipped. So one of your 3 items is complete. We do sell microchips for $13, and so we ask citizens to participate in that. They're at the time of redeeming their pet. And so you have the rabies vaccine and the spay-neuter are what's left. We do refer folks to the Contra Valley Paws low-cost option to buy a low-cost voucher. And as long as you can show, like, I've scheduled my appointment, I've gotten the rabies vaccine, then we're going to just continue following up and appreciate you taking progress towards gaining compliance. But if a citizen indicates, well, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to spay-neuter my pet, then we would just issue a citation at that time. We don't give a grace period.
So are you able to give a citation yourself?
I am, yes, and my animal services officers are as well. And so, but in general, we're wanting to give a grace period. Hey, you weren't aware of the ordinance. We want to give you some time. We give 10 days to show progress on scheduling those appointments, completing those deliverables.
What is the process of how do you find out that these people have not done as you asked, or they haven't gotten their pet neutered or spayed? They're just out there. How do you keep up with those people?
Well, our pet management software has all of that data, so I'll have the pet's name and identifying information. I'll have the owner's name and identifying information, including their date of birth, driver's license. I'll have all of that in our pet management software, and it's the owner's responsibility to provide that proof within the 10 days.
When you give them these vouchers, what are they worth, the vouchers?
We're referring, the city doesn't have a voucher program, so we're referring them to nonprofits to purchase vouchers through their program.
Larry?
Let's get back to the municipal court. Okay, they've made it that far. They're ignoring everything. Where can this ultimately end? Is it a misdemeanor? Can it result in
Any local
that?
ordinance violation would be a misdemeanor.
Okay, at what level?
They're all Class Cs. We only prosecute Class C misdemeanors. And I just want to add at this point that, I don't even know if Morgan knows this, but we are hiring a part-time temporary person to help with the backlog on the spay-neuter citations that are out there. I've used currently my intern, but I like my interns to have like a broad-based learning experience, so I don't want to keep them on one project too long. But we have an interview this afternoon, and we're hoping that that person will be able to, we'll meet with Morgan and that person to develop a better process to more efficiently move those folks through municipal court. We also require them to provide proof of either an appointment, which we then follow up on later, or some sort of documentation that the pet has been altered before we would dismiss the citation.
One other observation, I've checked on the price of chipping a dog with veterinarians around town. $13 is incredibly cheap.
Best deal in town.
I heard $40 at local vets.
And we register the chip for you, and so whatever information you provide at that time of implant, we register for, and any changes you make, if you move, if you want to add a different emergency contact, if you've rehomed the pet, all of that is a service offered at no cost, no annual fee.
Karen?
Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you mentioned a wait list for intake if an animal is surrendered to the shelter. Is that, did I hear you correctly?
Our owner surrender process can lead you to be being put on a wait list. Ideally, we want your pet rehomed, and that's part of our contract with Concho Valley Paws, that ideally we want your pet rehomed directly from your home to the adopter home. And so when we go through support services, like why do you want to give up your pet? Are you experiencing a financial issue? Does your pet have some behavior issues? Can we offer some resources to try to match those things? And let's see if that works out and you can retain ownership of your pet. If that or you have an unwanted litter of puppies, then let's get them in for vaccines. Let's start marketing them for adoption or transport. And so ideally, those animals are coming into our umbrella of care without a proper shelter intake. And then those animals are going directly to their home. So they're avoiding stress, they're avoiding disease, and then the pet owner is still getting, the service that they're needing. So a shelter intake would be a last resort for any owned pet. It should be the least desirous outcome.
Thank you for that. I have one further question. You mentioned the 10-day period that the citizen is given if they're in violation of the ordinance, and that you have multiple bits of information in your database that allows you to keep track of these people. But what happens at 10 days? If you haven't heard from them, is a ticket automatically generated? What happens at that 10 days?
That's the backlog we're working through of filing complaints through municipal court.
Yes, Harry.
Follow up on what Teresa and Larry said, just for my edification, in the last few months, have we increased the number of citations that we're getting because of the violations that are out there?
Absolutely.
I want citizens to understand that what this council is doing in supporting animal services is something that we're going to continue to do. And for those citizens that are not responsible, they are going to be cited, and we're going to continue to follow up on that.
And that's one thing that prompted this. We want to be a partner to families in need. We want to meet families where they are. We want to refer them to services. We want to invest in their pet ownership. We want them to retain ownership of their pet. But fiscal year 22 was a tough year for the shelter. It was tough, really nationwide, particularly for shelters in the South, and it was canines under 6 months of age. And so it's a direct result of families unable or unwilling to participate in the spay-neuter requirement. And so we've tried the friendly route. We've tried to be a partner. We've tried referring to low-cost options. And at this point, we had to just say, look, you're in violation, you're subject to a citation, that is what we're pursuing now.
I think I understand that on a national basis that animal shelters across the country are going through the same thing we're going through, that many people adopted pets during COVID, et cetera, or because of inflation right now, families can't afford the cost of taking care of a pet. It doesn't solve our problem here, but we need to understand it is a nationwide problem, and we've got to find answers to it locally. But and that's one of the reasons why in the past we've had people come to San Angelo, pick up 20 dogs, for example, and take it back to their home where they had people ready to adopt them. Some of that's become more complicated due to most cities having this same problem right now. Is that correct?
Yes, our transports remain strong. 1,000 animals did live on transport in fiscal year 22, but in recent months, it is dwindling significantly, and we expect it to continue to do so. Transports are highly seasonal. During hurricane season, we are bumped for those natural disasters, which of course is appropriate, but transports, 27% of our animals were leaving every year on transport, and that's well above best practices. And the reason why it's not recommended to be that low is because we're very vulnerable to those receiving communities. That if they say, we're full, we're done, we don't have those live outcomes for the animals here developed locally. And so we did increase the number of animals leaving by adoption last year, and we'll continue to do so because those transports are very much at risk of no longer being an opportunity for us.
We've interrupted your presentation several times, so my apologies, but it seemed timely to answer those questions. But at this point, do we have other questions for her before we move on? Yes, we do.
Well,
Tommy?
I have some questions, but I think she may be getting ready to address them right here on the capacity side, so I'll wait, I'll hold one question till she goes through that.
That's what I had on spay-neuter enforcement and compliance. The next section I wanted to touch on is related to animal capacity. That, again, nationwide, there's a national group called Shelter Animals Count, and they warned us in January, you guys, it's going to be a tough year. You did not have your slow season in the winter like you normally do. To be frank, they said Texas is going to be a bloodbath. You guys do not have the live outcomes to keep pace with your intake. And so we had this high puppy intake that I referenced in winter 2021. And so when we began our busy season in May, June, we were already full. And so we were publicly sharing that with the community and saying, look, we're over capacity, we're at capacity, we need help. And so we ended the summer with our evacuation for the pest infestation, and that really prompted setting a finite policy of how many animals we can house on the property, and just defined a maximum number of dogs and a maximum number of cats that no matter what, we're going to, of course, always observe and pursue life-saving programming, but in the event that we are over 180 dogs and 120 cats, we would need to consider, putting out an urgent plea or potentially euthanizing for space. So I do have the math of how we derived and arrived at those specific figures. We also received approval to house an additional 20 dogs in exigent circumstances with an expiration of 1 week. And what we mean by that is there are times that we have a hoarding case come in, or we have a house fire with, a half a dozen dogs in it, or some combination thereof. And so if we can say, look, we're over for a minute, we've had an event, this thing happened, we had a lot of canine intake, but be able to put out that plea for rescue and say, can someone come forward for these dogs? Who can foster? Who can take a transport? But we've got to get them moving within a week to get back down to that 180 or less. We also spoke to length of stay, that any kind of maximum length of stay or policy about length of stay would be determined by routine assessments of each animal's needs, just being able to identify those individual needs of that animal. The temperament and demeanor and stress of a shelter environment impacts every dog differently, and so to be able to say that we will, of course, consider euthanizing for length of stay if that is what the animal's only live outcome is at that point, or an only outcome is at that point, is there's no longer an opportunity for adoption because of the animal's digressing temperament, and so we would consider euthanasia for length of stay for those animals at that time, and we are doing routine assessments already to identify those issues, so animals aren't, warehoused and kept with no care pathway of where they're going. And so the way we arrived at that specific formula of 180 dogs and 120 cats is, a good rule of thumb is that every animal should be getting 15 minutes of care per day, 15 minutes per animal per day. The ASPCA further defines that 9 minutes of that should be cleaning. The animals get lots of care in lots of different ways, but 9 minutes of it should be cleaning. And so really the capacity or the threshold or the ceiling that we're bumping up against is staff time. How much staff do we have? How many hours are they logging daily? And so when we have 6 shelter workers, which is what I'm able to consistently fill. I'm budgeted for more, but we want it to be realistic, right? What jobs am I actually filling? That would be 48 hours a day or 2,700 minutes per day. And at 9 minutes per animal day per day, the rough math is 306 animals. We, of course, did not want to be at the maximum. And so we recommended the 300 animals broken down at 180 and 120 for the different species.
Morgan, and these 6 shelter workers are the ones that are actually doing the cleaning. We're not talking about the front desk person or anything like that. These are individuals.
That's correct. That, of course, our shelter assistant 3 is providing daily care in the way of bi-daily meds. Our shelter supervisor is providing care in processing and assessments. I'm providing care. Lots of people in a day are touching these animals, but these are specifically those tasked with cleaning, kennels, disinfecting, removing waste.
Yes, please, Michael.
one of the rescues we talked to quantified or talked about a ratio of staff to animals that they cared for, and they had a ratio. The ratio they talked to would have required more shelter workers than this. They expected to have many more shelter workers than this for this many animals. So the proposal is to be very efficient, and I'm not sure where she's going with the rest of the slides, but she's being very efficient with this, and so.
More is not a number, so requesting more is not a number. But I also picked up on what you said there. Would you go back to that screen? You say you have 6 shelter workers, but you're budgeted for more. You can staff as many as you want. If you can't hire them, it doesn't matter how many we've budgeted for. So we can obviously look at a budget issue relative to how many she needs, but if we can't get them hired and get them in there, it doesn't really matter, because how many are you budgeted for? 8. So you're budgeted for 2 more, which you haven't been able to hire.
Well, it's in a constant state of flux, so I may
Yeah,
have someone
but-
selected, and so it's a constant recruitment and retention effort, as many of the city's entry-level jobs are.
Do we have the availability? We have several organizations in town who work in the animal services, shelter, foster, et cetera. Is it possible to get them to donate 1 staff member per day to help us through this? I mean, they're there to get the end game of not euthanasia. So I would hope that we could fill some of that need in that way.
I'm sorry, Morgan, I didn't mean to bog you. I'm just pointing out that one of the rescues said more workers was part of the solution. And I don't know that she's going to ask for anything, but.
Lucy, go ahead.
Yeah, Morgan, do we not have any volunteer programs that can come in and help out with the shelter?
We do, and the volunteer program is run through our contract with Contra Valley Paws, and the volunteer program is not for cleaning, though. That's been clearly identified as a city function, a core function. There is some training and commitment that's needed for that, and we're doing this cleaning at times of day that volunteers are not frequently available. Like at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday, most volunteers have other obligations. So we do have a volunteer program and do get a lot of support from it, but this is something we would identify as, a core function of the city.
So the
Go ahead, Larry.
Volunteers essentially there for physical human touch, loving up animals, those kinds of things?
The volunteers do a lot of enrichment, dog walking, support services in that way. But as far as, especially, a lot of our dogs are brand new arrivals. We don't know their temperament yet. Some of our dogs are identified, and in our rabies quarantine room, we are housing easily half of our cats at any time are fractious feral cats. And so those are items that it would not be a good match for your average volunteer.
Do we have other questions for Morgan or comments at this point? Yes, go ahead, Tommy.
She answered part of it. I had the opportunity to go out there and visit some with Morgan, and she gave me a tour of the facility. If the council has not been out there recently, I would recommend you go out there. It's an eye-opening experience. You may be getting ready to go there and tell us maybe what some of your needs are, or is that something you're going to visit with us about? And I'm not trying to hurry you along, but just if you weren't, I was going to ask a couple of questions about.
I do have a couple more slides on capacity, and maybe that'll speak to it.
Just a minute, Morgan. Lucy had a comment she wanted to make.
I had a comment, and it just went out the door when I was listening to Tommy's questions. So
It'll come back.
It'll come back to me.
Go ahead, Morgan.
So just to close up the discussion on animal capacity, one thing that we're getting additional training on is identifying care pathways for all animals on intake. That of course we honor a stray hold, we try to return to owner, then we place up for adoption, but it can be more nuanced and have more detail on it than that. And so we are getting training and a lot of mentorship from our national groups to really clearly define care pathways for animals so that animals aren't just languishing, waiting for their adoption. We're a lot more proactive in that. As we have been doing, we will continue euthanasia for behavior and untreatable medical. One thing that continues to come up about no-kill programming or life-saving programming is that we're putting reactive animals back out to the community. But no-kill programming is defined as 90% because there are those animals that are not adoptable, should not go back in our community, that we would not, place in a foster home. And we caution owners that do own bite dogs that they've got to take an additional responsibility related to those animals. To date, we have decreased our canine population over 100 animals and maintained that for almost 60 days now. And that has been entirely through life-saving programming. And I think that's important to hear, that going into this pest control treatment, we were carrying about 280 dogs. We put out an urgent plea for rescue. Who can foster a dog for 7 days? Who can step forward in that way? And so many of our animals were adopted through that process. So many fosters continued to stay on and house animals for us. And so as of close of business yesterday, month end, we were at 178 dogs. So to date, we have not euthanized for time or space. We have met all deliverables entirely through life-saving programming, and will continue to do so. We were quite close, right? 178 is very close to 180. And so we were preparing a euthanasia list to share publicly and with rescue partners to say these animals are the ones that will be euthanized at Monday close of business if they do not have a rescue tag and are not come and claimed from the shelter. So we do have a policy for that. We will clearly communicate that. And we will be the shelter this community wants us to be. So far, San Angeloans have had the resources to come out and force and support us. But to the extent San Angeloans say, I'm at my limit, I can't help any longer, then we would be euthanizing for space to meet and maintain that that standard of 180 dogs and 120 cats. One thing the council could consider is if we were to close canine intake, if we were at 170 dogs, to say, look, we're at our limit. 180 is a cap. We've got to stay under that. One thing the council could also consider is funding a monthly amnesty day. As we reached out to other shelters in this situation, we said, what are y'all doing? What are the creative solutions? And so one of the things that they're offering is a get out of jail free card for owned pets. And so if a family says, I know my pet's in the shelter, but I can't afford the fees. I know y'all are going to write me a ticket. I'm not coming. Just keep my pet. I'm not coming. And so if I can say, look, let me refer. I think Concho Valley Paws is committed to them getting spay-neuter vouchers, and we'll get them a rabies vaccine, get them a microchip at no cost from the city, and then waiving those fees to be able to say today, November 1st is our first amnesty day. If your pet's in the shelter, we're going to match you with services. We're going to get you all these resources, and we're going to get your pet back to you. And then it's no longer in the shelter. Taxpayer dollars aren't caring for an owned pet, and that animal's back home and no longer taking up place in the shelter.
Are all rescue groups working with us? I know we have the contract with PAWS, but the question is, they're not the only organization in town who's in the rescue and adoption of animals. So do we have cooperation from all the animal rescue groups?
As of August, all local rescues at that point had pulled from our shelter and are welcome to continue to do so. I had a dog yesterday. We were so close to being at capacity, and we reached out to a local rescue, and they came for a particularly reactive Chihuahua that was not doing well in the shelter and needed some rehab, and that's absolutely a great place for it to take effect is in a rescue that can spend that additional time with that animal. And so, yes, we are wide open to all rescues. We have a large network nationwide of rescues, but the local ones, as of August, they are all signed up on the contract and have all pulled from my facility.
Yes, Lucy.
Morgan, I remembered my question. I have a constituent that has called me twice already on this cat issue. that he has so many cats that are around and he doesn't know what to do. What would be a solution for that constituent?
So y'all approved last year a nuisance colony assistance program, and I've not yet spent all that money. And so I'm working a couple of colonies for Councilmember Hesse Smith right now. I'm wrapping up an area, a colony on the Tuig area right now. And so we a little bit have a wait list on our nuisance colony assistance. But what that citizen would get through that program is, first we contact the feeder. Hey, you're the colony caregiver, you have these responsibilities. To the extent that the colony is all spay-neutered and vaccinated and on their property, then they're compliant with the ordinance at that point. But what we're finding is the vast majority of colonies do need additional service. And so if they do need to get the rest of their colony spay-neutered, then we provide traps. Contra Valley Paws had an inventory of traps that Animal Services Officers delivers. The property owner, the complainer, would bait and set the trap. We would provide food and trap for them to bait and set. They call us when it's occupied. We pick it up at no charge. It enters that nuisance colony assistance program that y'all had approved. And so for the colony on Tuig, as an example, I think we're upwards of 20 cats that we've impounded from that colony right now. So the wild adults we're spay-neutering and putting back, right? They help keep additional animals at bay from coming in. That gets that feeder in compliance. And then the ones that are young and can be tamed, we're keeping for adoption. So that's going to decrease their colony population two ways: that I'm impounding the ones that can be tamed, and I'm releasing the ones that cannot, so that they are no longer reproducing and are keeping other cats at bay. So that's something, if you'll refer them to me or email me their address, we will get in contact with them and try to match them with services. It is a program that is working, and because of our contract with Contra Valley Paws, that they're providing those spay-neuters at no cost, there is money still left from y'all's original allocation for that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments at this point? Yes, Harry.
You may have said this, and I probably didn't hear it, but on bullet point number 2, what do you mean by returning owned pets? I suspect that we did that on a regular basis, so what do we actually mean here?
We do. I think that Amnesty Day would speak to some barriers, that I do still have owned pets that are not getting claimed by their owners. I do, best practices for a no-kill shelter would be that 15% of your animals are returning to owner. We are head and shoulders above that. I think we finished fiscal year 22 with 24% of our animals returned to owner. And so
How many, Morgan?
24%, a quarter of our animals are going back to their owners. And that's huge, and that's good, and it's above best practices, but it can be better. Every adult dog came from somewhere. Cats can be spontaneously occurring and have no owner, but every dog came from somewhere. So I look at a dog, and I know it has a house. I know someone's poured into it. I know somebody spent time with it. Where are their people? And so if we started funding a monthly Amnesty Day, perhaps that speaks to some of those barriers of why people aren't coming for their pets. Some of those barriers that we see are lack of reliable transportation. And I have a fleet of trucks in the community patrolling all day, so I can load up a dog and get it back to you. Some of it is a language barrier. So I do have Spanish-speaking staff that are available to assist those individuals. Some of it is the fees and in general, distrust of government and the fear of citations. So the Amnesty Day would speak to that last item and get even more pets returned to their owners.
Okay, continue.
So the last item that I had before you today are our facility capital needs. And I bring this to you with the caveat that I am not a construction manager nor an architect, and I just see needs in the facility. And
Can I ask a question, because this is a nice long list. We just got through with a budget session. Based off of that, we're 30 days into the new year. Where were the requests? Because these things didn't just happen.
The vast majority of these have been submitted through the capital improvement plan annually. And there were items I submitted in the budget that could not be considered for funding for this fiscal year. So we shifted. So the new requests that I'm making are, well, we didn't get those prior things funded, or something else we could try. For example, we had requested 2 additional animal services officers, which is something we're hearing again and again. We need to write more tickets. We need to be in the field more. But it's something that, there are a lot of demands in the budget, and no one understands that more than I I do. And so these capital needs, one, some of them are new and developing, these last two items in particular. Second, the more than half of them have been submitted in the capital plan in the past, and there just hasn't been resources or support to move forward with them. But if it does gain some traction and warrant some additional attention, then we are working closely with the city's architect on getting more details. Because I know that we need an air exchange system, but there's a lot that goes into that. And to really bring to you a proper funding request, I couldn't begin to tell you what something like that would cost. And so we're working with the architect. He has reached out to engineering services vendors to get more information, because there are a number of these things that we think are right now things, the plumbing and the drains and my general kennels, as well as the air exchange, I think are things that need to be funded this cycle, whether it's for next budget year or this coming capital plan. But ideally, we would have some level of attention on each of these items.
Okay, so, all right, yes, Michael.
These are, this is a general listing to make you aware that she is thinking these are the needs. We are stepping through the development process for a project, and we are meeting on a weekly basis to determine a strategy. The plumbing is key at this point, and the air exchange system. Both we anticipate will be expensive, at least tens of thousands. And so
Again, we just got through and I'm not, go ahead, sorry.
She has set aside some money that we've been rolling over, and so we don't know what this is going to look like when it's done. This is more in the heads up kind of a slide, not a I'm asking for something slide. But just to make you aware that there are some capital needs out there, and we're working on a plan and a strategy that we would come back to you on later. But
Through the proper channels.
Yes, Harry. I'm here. Hey, Tommy, come on. Sorry, Brenda.
Spray.
Yes.
Morgan, just having been out there and walking through the facility with you, are any of these things critical to the health and safety aspect of not only the animal, but ultimately to the mayor's first question of you, what is the purpose of an animal services in any city? And it's for the health and safety of the citizens. So are any of these items on this list something that you would say, ultimately, this could be a health and safety issue, not only for the animals themselves, but also for our citizens?
Yes, there are facility needs that are limiting our ability to meet our basic and core function to the community and providing for the public health and the public safety. That if these needs were addressed, we could do our job better for citizens. Absolutely.
It occurs to me, we've had some excess sales tax that I know we've used it for roads in the past, but this may be something maybe we need to consider once you get a better handle on costs, something that you come to us and say, this is a need for health and safety issues, that maybe then we could look at something like that. That's just some food for thought.
Well, if you were requesting it in the budget, but we said there wasn't enough money in the budget to do it this year, what was the dollar amount you were requesting that was unfunded?
I don't have that with me. I know 2 animal services officers would be, in excess of $100,000, as well as their, trucks and gear. So the others, I apologize, I didn't bring that with me.
Further questions or comments at this point? Karen?
I just wanted to speak in support of what Tommy has already said. I also have spent time with Morgan visiting the shelter, taking a comprehensive tour, looking at the deficits in the building. The building itself actually is not a great building, and so remediating issues in a building that's declining property is also an issue. And to Morgan's credit, there are things on here that are pretty essential, and she hasn't even included them. So I realize it's a general list, but we are aware and we are in support. I am in support of you having what you need to make life safety the critical need that it is. Address it as it should be.
If you're saying it's essential, why isn't it on here?
Well,
if it's essential.
I can give an example. She doesn't have adequate wiring to support a commercial washer and dryer. She's operating the shelter with a single residential washer and dryer, and that remedy would be fairly simple to do and fairly inexpensive. The rewiring that would facilitate hooking up commercial equipment is not terribly costly. And I believe Morgan told me that someone donated commercial equipment to her, but she was unable to use it for that reason. So you can correct me, I probably misunderstood some of it. But every day the amount of laundry that you have is probably astonishing because of your cleaning needs.
Do you have money in the budget that's discretionary, is that correct?
Yes, the project that Councilmember Hesse Smith's describing is quite large, and we did get way down the road on it and finally identified that it wasn't a good fit. We also think that by maintaining our capacity.
Washer and dryer weren't a good fit, or what?
Well, we have a designated laundry room. The commercial units do not, and with 2 washers and 2 dryers. The commercial units physically don't fit in that room. So we would have to install in a new room, an add-on room outside the building somehow. Also, any kind of maintenance service agreement, it's tough to get that in our community. There's not a readily available vendor to do that, and it's not a skill set that any city, building maintenance staff has to maintain those units. We also, if we're setting our capacity and have set our capacity at 180 dogs, and we build out appropriate kennel space. Right now, my small dogs are in what I call cubbies. My new intake dogs are in cubbies. That is not ideal. They should be in proper intake kennels, in which case they wouldn't have linens, and we wouldn't be using soft things. They would have their plastic beds, the Corunda beds, and there wouldn't be any more laundry. And so the laundry was something that we did make the decision to move on from and do foresee a future where it's essentially a non-issue.
I think the saddest part about this conversation is that obviously this animal services issue is a community issue, and that we're having to and will be having to use tax dollars from citizens who do take care of their animals, who do the right thing, to take care of the problem of those citizens who do not choose to do the right thing and put the burden on the city and I look at this laundry, as we spoke about, laundry list of items. It's quite expensive, and it's going to be quite expensive. So we're going to have to use taxpayer dollars to take care of a facility that is, as I said, taking care of people who won't do the right thing. And I'm not sure, but if I looked at this list, I'm probably looking at close to $2 million. And we don't have $2 million. I mean, we have some money, but we don't have $2 million. And again, it's $2 million that might be used for other things that all citizens might benefit from, such as infrastructure on the streets, police or fire. And I love animals. I get the passion here. But there's obviously a large number of citizens in this city that don't have passion for animals. And they expect the city to bear the financial burden for this. Just a comment.
I think it's similar to other departments. The police department, for example, a good many St. Angeloans never have to visit it, never have to interact with an officer, but are paying a substantial taxes to support it. And so we're created because there's not that private industry to pick it up. And we do. Those that can't afford taxes and are responsible are my adopters and my fosters and my volunteers. And so we are serving 2 very different worlds, marginalized people and large taxpayer people.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying coming up with the kind of dollars it's going to take to do this is taking money away from other areas of the city of San Angelo who, because we only have X amount of money. I mean, there's only X amount of money in a budget, so whenever you have to address these issues, which obviously we do, it's our responsibility, it's taken money away from other things that we might have chosen to fund instead, but now can't because of the crisis here. So we need to do a really good job of communicating the issue at the animal shelter in terms of what the animal shelter's purpose is, what we need the citizens to do. Again, it's not everybody's responsibility who's a good pet owner to take care of somebody else's pet because all of a sudden they can't. Yes, Harry?
Just a quick comment from somebody that's a numbers guy. I would suggest that Morgan put together the numbers on these things, and especially those that Tommy mentioned that could be health and safety situations. Bring them back. Let's see what the cost is, and then let's see whether or not there's money somewhere that we can dedicate to that. I mean, the bottom line from our perspective is I think everybody up here wants to do the right thing, wants to support the shelter and what they do, but we need to know what that cost is.
Are there more slides, Morgan?
That's what I've prepared.
Do we have more questions or comments for, yes, Larry?
This gets back to a really basic thing. You've got 6 people who are working there doing the dirtiest work that I can imagine. I don't like the idea we just throw up our hands and say, well, we can't fill the other 2 positions. What can we do? And I think we need to be creative to a degree about it because I think it's cruel to those people that are working overtime to keep that place clean when there may be some options for us to consider on how to fill that void.
And so the recent changes to the pay plan certainly have made the job more attractive. And so we're in the infancy of posting under that new dollar amount and able to recruit for a higher rate of pay. And we also increased recently our part-time positions to be a higher rate of pay as well. And so those have been in the recent last couple of months, and we do think that given letting those items have time to work, I think I'm right now recruiting for 6 positions across the division. And so we've got several that we'll fill this month, and then the continued recruitment of these jobs in particular. I think we need to let those items work. I think the investment in the pay plan and the change in how we've posted the jobs will create some additional attention.
I think we need to make sure we're doing all we need to do in terms of public announcements and because, again, we can't keep funding. We will continue to fund the issue, but at some point we've got to make a much stronger pitch towards the citizens on their responsibilities, including from the day you make a decision as a family to adopt or to go out and get a pet for the family, what the expected expense is, what the costs are going to be just in the first 6 months that you have a pet. Puppies are cute. They're wonderful. So are little baby kittens. But they're expensive, and they take a lot of time, care, and money. And we need to be very focused on communicating that to the public about, I know your child wants a puppy. I know how cute they are. I know what a great friend an animal can be to your family. But can you afford it?
It's a 15-year commitment.
And it's a 15-year commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be very upfront about the cost of owning a pet.
Brenda.
You need to be very aggressive. Yes, Tom?
So Morgan, where I'll go with this, we're looking at the low-hanging fruit here that we can do something quick to kind of take the weight off the shoulders of staff out there. And number one would be basically reducing your inventory caseload, the number of pets out there. The amnesty thing is it's a great idea. Now, my concern there is you're probably, I don't know, in the Blue Book, the animal shelter is like $1.5 million expense. It has revenues of, barely over 100,000, I think. Would doing the amnesty, if we did an amnesty program, would that decrease your revenues to where it affects your budget going forward?
Yes, we had estimated in a monthly amnesty day, we had estimated about 10 people participating per day. And so we are looking at $210 in city expense and $2,600 in lost revenue. And that's to give a free microchip and to waive the fees. So we would foresee that to be a quite nominal impact to our budget to offer such a program.
So tell me, you think it'll affect it or not? I mean,
Not, well, it
If you don't
will
think it's gonna,
significantly.
if it's not gonna be that much of an issue, I would say bring that back to us, throw us up some real numbers, but the amnesty part looks like we could decrease your caseload, to decrease the need for, inventory and pets and things per day. We could do that. So I'm all in favor if you bring something like that back really quick, we might be able to help out.
Yes, Lucy?
Morgan, how many dogs do you have that would require the amnesty program if we went with that?
The number of owned dogs that the owners would qualify for the program, it could be all 178 dogs. Every dog came from
there.
somewhere. So the number of dogs in my facility that are microchipped and tagged that owners haven't come for is less than 10. If we have a lead on an owner, if we see it on a lost and found site, if it has a tag or a microchip, we're following up multiple times. We're asking, what can we do for you to get your pet back? But it's the untagged, unchipped pets that we just have no leads on, that we can't follow up on. So out of 178 dogs, any of them over 4 or 6 months of age were owned by somebody. Somebody invested in them. Somebody had them in their home, and they had a name, and those people should be getting their pets back.
What's the negative impact on the general fund for the animal shelter?
Well, it'd be that net difference between the revenue and the expenditure.
So we're already spending $1.2 million to operate the animal shelter.
Absolutely. By taxpayer dollars.
Taxpayer dollars going $1.2 million to operate the animal shelter.
That may make some sense then to have some of these needs addressed, even though we may be taking money either out of reserves or maybe out of excess sales tax, to maybe then ultimately decrease that impact to the city budget. So maybe that's something we need to look more closely.
But we got to stop with the intake. I mean, yes, we can do all of that, but our problem is, that stuff is, but the problem is the number of animals that keep showing up. It's so we get rid of 50 more come in. We get rid of 20 more come in. The issue is the intake, the amount of intake of animals in this city.
And I think there are other government facilities that say, we're full. The contribution from the taxpayers is a finite amount. This is what we're going to pay to house our animals. And if we're over 170 and we say we're full, I'm so sorry. This dog you found, we're not taking it in.
Do you have a list? If we say that to someone, do you have a list of all the organizations that exist today that they could go visit and hope that one of them would take the dog in for adoption? For
animal back home.
I think you must have the meeting room bugged. This is exactly what we talked about, how do we manage intake? And she said, they manage intake by shutting intake down. When you're full, you don't take any more animals. And so
do we currently use that policy?
we don't, and that's
so
why
if we're full, what do we do when we're full? If we don't tell them we can't take them.
I put out an urgent plea for fosters and rescues, and I euthanize for space. The capacity is still so new to us, so we're walking through it. We're figuring it out, and so to date, those urgent pleas have worked.
What does the word capacity mean? I mean,
it's this 180.
I know, but is capacity?
Would you like to try that for a month and get a report back? And
I'd like council input on that.
Limited at 170 and say we're full? Absolutely.
Well, her capacity's 180, but at 170,
170.
she stops accepting people walking animals through the front door.
It's going to make some people mad, but I mean, we have to look at the overall picture of it and what it accomplishes in the long term, just not the short-sighted part. So I would have no problem supporting a 170 limit to where she says we can't take any more.
I mean, Morgan, you're in a tough position, and I know today is a tough conversation to have with us. So you have support from this council to help try to solve the issue. but I think we also have to have some hard questions asked, and we have to deal with some issues that are not going to be liked by some people. But again, we got to deal with the problem. We'll try to solve the operational issues that you have, and we'll look seriously at those. But our biggest issue still goes back to capacity and how many we have room for, and how we deal with what the word capacity means. Capacity means we're full. So if 180 is full, 180 is full, right?
Let me ask, when you use the word or we've been using the word intake, you used the phrase dropping them off. When we use the word intake, is intake only dropping them off, or is intake other things as well? I had a very recent conversation with someone that called and they couldn't come get the dogs and so forth. Would that be considered intake as well?
Yes, any animal coming in. But in San Angelo in particular, we are skewed high at across-the-counter intake. 70% of my animals come in every year from citizens finding them and bringing them to me. We're a community of helpers. People want to intervene. They want to get that animal the help they need. And so we have shared a lot of communications about a shelter intake's not the best opportunity for that animal if you want to invest in that animal. So the vast majority of our intake is citizens finding and bringing it across the front counter. Then there's always that risk of, is it really a found pet or is it their dog? Sometimes I get a dog in and it's quite reactive with my staff, and even my skilled staff is like, this dog's growling at me, this dog's trying to bite me. And I'm like, how did a private citizen find it and get it in her vehicle? Well, we do some more researching, and it was actually, her own dog that she didn't want anymore, and they falsified a document. So 70% of our intake is across the front counter. 30% is from our animal services officers patrolling, and for our animal services officers, they have a great return to owner rate in the field. So the animals actually never brought into the shelter. We're knocking doors, we're looking up water customers, we're trying to contact folks and say, look, there's this brown dog in front of your house. Is it yours? Oh, it's your neighbor's in the White House. Great, we'll reach out to them. And so if we can skew that the other way, where 70% of my intake is actually animal services officers, then they get them home quite quickly. And San Angeloans, step back and don't intervene in that way.
So 70% of the intake is someone who says, I found this pet and I'm bringing it in for you to take care of.
That's correct.
Not, this is my pet, I can't take care of it anymore.
Well,
or whatever they say.
Yeah.
I'd like some.
Go ahead, Michael, then Lucy.
I'd like some clarity on the numbers so that moving forward, there's not confusion. 180 is the number. She does have an overrun buffer in case there is an event, a fire, or a puppy mill is raided, and she has an overrun buffer. There you go. 20 additional dogs in circumstances where they have to assist.
Emergency.
Exactly, and she has a time limit associated with that. So 170, what we'll do is we'll handle this from a management perspective, no council action necessary. That way we can reverse it, management can reverse it if necessary. 170, she can shut down intake. 180 is her limit, but she can go above 180 if she has to support some sort of an event, a fire or whatever. But I wanted you to be aware of those numbers because there are different numbers in case you hear or see them somewhere.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Lucy?
Just a quick question, Morgan. What is the number of intake per day, would you say, the average?
It's highly seasonal. So our annual intake last year was 4,000 animals. That was down 5% from the year before. We've been in the 4,200 to 4,500 animal range for 4 years now. This last year was the first year that we accepted intake from city limits only, so that's what we would attribute that 5% decrease to. So we took in 4,000 animals last year, and the species can skew it quite a lot. And so in prior years, we took in easily 500 stray livestock, and this last year, livestock was way down. Just fewer people were carrying, breeding livestock because of the increased expenses with feed and hay, and so our stray livestock last year was down a lot, and actually impacted our live release rate quite a bit because we always get stray livestock back to their people. And so hundreds of animals fewer on the livestock side, so hundreds more canines came in.
So the 4,000, what percent are dogs?
Let's see, 1,200-ish are cats. About
You're at
400
2,800.
were livestock and wildlife. So 2,200 were dogs. I don't have my calculator.
About 2,200.
2,600.
This being the first day of the month, we can see how it goes for the next 30 days and you initiate if 170 is the number, then 170 is the number, or 180 is the absolute top limit unless you've got an exigent.
And we're still saying city limits only, meaning if they're in the county, they cannot bring their animal into the animal shelter, correct?
That's correct. And
But what happens if it's a cow?
inside city limits? If it's a loose cow inside city limits, we do bring that animal in. And as y'all mentioned, we're a shelter in crisis. We are trying to throw lots of things at this and try to fix it. We've been very busy. And so one of the things longer term that we are exploring is a week-long mentorship with one of our national organizations where they come in and they tutor us on coordinated intake. Because as an example, best practices for a community our size would be to be taking in 1,400 animals 14 animals per 1,000 citizens, and so that would be about 1,400 animals for our community, and I'm taking in triple
Annually.
that annually.
And we're at 4,000.
I take that in
Our number should
cats.
be 1,400, and we're at 4,000.
So based on that metric, we were matched with some additional resources, and we are approved for that week-long mentorship to go back to our policies and say, what needs to be changed, what can be changed, what additional support can we, because if we're taking in that many animals, do we have that many San Angeloans in crisis? If my shelter's in crisis, then we have families that are struggling. And so, what resources, what other things need to be put in place to really address that big picture? But for today, of course, we're dealing with just the most urgent emergency items. But just so y'all know that it is on the horizon.
I think if these statistics are pretty shocking. If we should be at 1,400 and we're at 4,000, well, I think we have a real need to reevaluate policies to start addressing such an overwhelming amount of animals.
That is why we require the wait list for owner surrenders and a number of other items.
We're going to have to get more aggressive. That number's hard to swallow.
And Mayor, there are cats and dogs all over town. I mean, they're just in every direction that I drive. They're like little packs of them. I mean, cats going across the street. It's just a lot of problem right now.
We patrol your neighborhood quite frequently.
Because of the changes you've made and, a little bit more emphasis on citations, have you seen a drop in the intake that you have? And it leads me to a second question after you answer that.
Yes, sir. Our intake for September was quite low. It was 240 animals. It hadn't been that low in over a year and a half. And for the season, that was remarkably low. We're usually only under 300 animals intake in like January, February. So definitely for September, folks heard us and said, we know you're a shelter in crisis. October, that hasn't proven to be true. We're back to normal. But definitely the press we were getting and the coverage we were getting did yield some changes in our operations.
In the unfortunate circumstance that you do reach 100, and here I am, I find a dog in my front yard, and I run it over to you, and you say, well, we can't handle it. Well, I'm stuck with this animal. What am I going to do with it? And I can imagine most people would simply release it. So that doesn't help our problem one bit.
So we got a lot of criticism when we closed the night drop, our after-hours kennels, that there were just going to be dogs turned loose, and different policies we've provided, like owners have to go through a process. Well, your criticism is that people are just going to turn their dogs loose, and we've just not found that to be true. And so if you find an adult dog in your front yard, it's so highly likely he's one of these 6 houses around you that owns that dog. And so it would be neighborly conversations and grassroots and knocking doors and, hey, you've got to get your dog out of my yard. Of course, we want to do all of that outreach and communication before you drive all the way across town to my facility, and I have to tell you no, that, hey, because we're at this amount, we are closed for intake. If you see a dog, leave it be. If it's a danger to itself or others, call us. If it's a Chihuahua that won't stay out of Sherwood Way, if it's a large breed dog that is chasing your children, for sure call us. Those are things that are the public health and public safety. But in the event it's a nice dog that has wandered in your front yard, he lives right here. He's got to get home.
Do we have, I know when I go to visit a doctor, I have to sign all these documents that make sure I understand everything that might happen or not happen, or the liability, the responsibility that I have. Do we have a sheet of paper that when somebody comes in to adopt, that we say, this dog might cost you X amount of dollars a month, it's, an annual budget for your family needs to be about this amount of money? Do you understand the requirements of spay and, not spray, but spay and neuter, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, I wonder if we're handing something to somebody and say, you need to read this while you're here, and then you need to sign the document.
There's absolutely a document like that adopters are signing in their contract. And to speak to the number of the spay-neuter compliance, it's just for owned pets. For adopters, 98% of the animals are going home spay-neutered. Those that aren't are signing an agreement that I will comply with this contract to have the animals spay-neutered. And to the extent that you don't, there are legal means to pursue through that way. It does speak to the lifelong commitment to the animal. So there is a document like what you're describing, absolutely. And they have to initial each item all the way down.
Okay, well, we certainly had a vibrant conversation. And again, I know the situation out there has been tough to handle. And I know that all of us have spent a lot of time and effort in conversation with people, as well as responding to emails and text messages. But I think the message today is we've got to find answers. And if 1,400 is the number of pets we ought to be taking in, 4,000 is an unacceptable number. And we need to figure out how to reduce that number and reduce the overall expense to the taxpayer for managing this problem. So I don't believe there's any action that needs to be taken today. Is that correct? So no action will be taken on this item today. And so once again, thank you. And
Thanks, Morgan.
we will help try to solve the problem.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I think there's someone who wants to speak in the back.
Oh, yes. Please come forward. Anyone who would like to offer comment, please.
How much time do I just
3
ask
minutes.
all my questions, or is it a discussion, since it's on the agenda?
Public comment is for you to provide your comments to council.
My name's Jatan Giese. I'm with District 5.
Would you talk more into that microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jatan Giese, District 5. With closing the shelter, I think that's unrealistic, because I know they've had a program where they say a Good Samaritan Good Samaritan Act, where you keep it for 3 days. And then if somebody says, well, I've had this dog for 3 days, oh, it's yours now. That's not, but you can't, the dog's just leaving them roaming. They do go out in the street unless you're out in the country and there's no streets available. But they're just wandering around getting pregnant is what's happening. So I just think that's unrealistic to close it. Also, y'all talked about citations, a backlog and all that. We've had this spay-neuter ordinance for a long time. 7 years now. people know that they're supposed to have it done. And when those dogs are released, why can we not just give them a post-dated citation that becomes effective when they don't bring the proof back, saying, well, I messed up, I've got to show this, that this is done now. And all the ones that are still there, if they don't have proof, just send the citation now instead of researching, just send it and let those people get back to us.
You made a good comment. I want to have Teresa answer that one comment that I thought was very good about a post-dated citation. Is that legal?
No, it's really not legal to issue somebody a citation for a violation that they have not yet committed. So we...
It's not spayed or neutered, and it's there at the shelter.
But they give them time to do that. We used to have a vet, but that didn't work out at the shelter, so we can't do it at the shelter. So that's why there's a program to allow them to have a certain amount of time. I wouldn't support that, and
When you're adopting an animal, you do have to give them the time. But I'm talking about people that come and pick up their dog. They're already in
And I think that's
violation.
the process that we are looking at, doing citations quicker on those folks. And then there's still a whole, as people think there's a citation and immediately goes to court, there's a whole side of that on my end that happens. And I think, citations that are written now might be heard in April or May. So we work in my office to gather information to allow people still to remedy the violation if they can, and then dismiss it to kind of lower the number of cases that are at court. But we can't post-date a citation. We are addressing those folks that have strays that come in and that we do issue citations, and I think that's part of what Morgan's talking about.
Okay. With the mess that's had here, do we have an official cleaning protocol done that it's established? I want to see that. And then with the numbers, with the 6 people, how many of those 6 people are for just cleaning for those 9 minutes? I thought she said it was just 3 that were for
No,
cleaning.
I think all 6, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all 6 that she listed there were in fact only for cleaning. She has other staff at the shelter, but their jobs are not to clean. So she's budgeted for 8. Of the 8, she's been able to hire 6, and those 6 do nothing but clean.
That's correct.
If I'm not mistaken.
No, that's the question I asked
8 for just cleaning, and then somebody else does the feeding, or do they do it at the same time? Is that part of?
Morgan,
is that
I don't
what's part
want
of the 9 minutes?
to answer a question I don't have
The part of
information to
the
do.
part of the 9 minutes is feeding included with that? That they were recommending?
No, a different staffer is feeding, medical. This is just cleaning. I only listed cleaning staff for the 9-minute cleaning time, is what is setting that capacity.
The 6 that you have, and then the 8 that you're wanting.
Correct.
Okay. The assessing, do they partnered with somebody to have somebody qualified for the assessing? Because you were talking about a dog that comes in and, oh, this dog's growling at me, and you find out it's really the owners that surrendered it. But that's not always the case. They're scared. And do they have, other than walking them in with the catch pole, oh, they're growling, oh, they're scared. Do they have somebody that's trained to assess them, the dogs, for their temperament? And is that separate from the cleaning staff?
Yes, I would say separate than cleaning, but Morgan, you might want to talk to the growling dog. When you take an animal into an animal shelter, they're going to smell other dogs. Right?
This is really outside the scope of public comment. We should just be hearing her comments and not responding to each of them individually.
I will stop talking.
Okay, I thought you were able to respond when it's
The comment.
on the agenda.
Just
No.
comments from the public. This is what we're doing.
Okay, well, I want to urge that closing the shelter is not an answer. Something has to be done for that part.
Thank you for your comments.
Mary Casper, I'm not in the city, but I'm close enough to the city that, yeah, I get dogs dropped off generally. My question is, how many frequent flyer owners do you have indoor dogs? Are a lot of the dogs the same dogs? A lot of them the same owners whose dogs habitually get out and run around? And when do you put a stop to that? Or can you put a stop to that?
Morgan, can you answer that question? Or, again, I'm
It's still
supposed to
common.
stop talking, so I'm
It's
going to
still
stop
public.
talking. Sorry. Just trying to address the issues and answer some questions for people, so, but sorry.
Maybe they can have the conversation after.
Okay. Mary, were you finished with your comments, though? I mean, were you finished with your comments? I know you asked a question,
You know,
and
it's just it seems to be such a big problem, and how many are really repeat offenders? You know, so that would be something I would think to have another level of.
conversation about. Stop talking, Brenda. Okay. Other public comment? Seeing none, we will conclude this conversation and move on to, let's see, we are not doing item C, so we are going to go into the closed session, executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 122.36 acres out of Survey 644, Abstract 1881, W. Spornhahn, and out of Survey 645, Abstract 4212, C. Zek, and B, Section 551.074, personal matters regarding the evaluation, discipline, or dismissal of John Barrio from the COSA DC Board, and item C, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding COSA DC.
Mayor?
Yes, Tommy.
I'd also like to remove from considerations item B and C.
May I ask council members if they wish to support Tommy's request to remove item B and C?
I do.
Is there any opposition to that request?
No opposition.
With that, we will now.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, yes, sir.
As a point of order, under that same section you just quoted on this item, thank you for those who are pulling it, but I did officially notify the city clerk on Friday, I believe that was the 28th, that pursuant to the local government code, section 551.074, as the individual person and named subject of the above referenced city council agenda item, I respectfully submit this formal request to compel the city council to move any and all discussion, deliberation, process, or other actions on this personnel matter, out of closed session and into public hearing during the conduct of council on November 1st, 2022.
Mayor?
And is regularly scheduled.
When Tommy made the request and nobody wants to have it considered today, then it's not going to be considered in or
I agree,
out
it's
of
not
public
going to be
session.
considered, but as a matter of law,
It will not be discussed.
okay. This request was submitted to the city
Yes, sir.
clerk, and she did not intervene at the time that the agenda item was read. And I think that is a legal matter, and I appreciate all the state officials who are observing this meeting for this particular purpose. Thank you.
I'm not sure what that last comment meant, but I would like to say at this time, I do think there is a need for training, both with City Council and the COSA DC on the laws, the statutes, the rules, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, all of those things. I think there's a lot of talking past each other on some of those things, so I've talked to Brandon about doing a joint training with City Council and COSA DC sometime after the new year to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So before we go into executive session to discuss the land item, I would like to state that that is something that I would desire to do.
I think that's a great idea. I think there's been a lot of misinformation put out there, so I think it's definitely warranted. So thank you for that.
Okay. So we will be going into executive session. If everyone would please be seated, we will call this meeting back to order at 11:21 a.m. Following our closed session. At this moment, there are no announcements to be made from the closed session, so we will now move into follow-up and administrative issues. That's item A. As I said, there is nothing to announce. Item B, consideration of approving various board nominations. Airport Advisory Board, Joseph Rollo for the mayor, Bruce Partain, SMD 1 to his second term, Teresa Special, SMD 2, and William Pritchard, SMD 6 to a third term, all ending October 2024. May I have a motion for approval? So moved by Harry.
Second.
Seconded by Tom. Any public comment concerning those nominations? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With no nays, motion passes. And then item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? Seeing none, may I have a motion for adjournment? So moved by Tommy.
Second.
Second by Tom. A vote for dismissal. Everybody, we in agreement?
Aye.
You got it. We are now adjourned at 11:23.